Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Hacking Open Source Business podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Matt Yonkovit, the host here at Scarf. And then once again, I'm joined by Avi Press, the CEO of Scarf. And today we're joined by Maxim Wheatley, who's from Merico. And Maxim, you are the head of global marketing and sales, correct?
That's correct. Thanks for having me today, guys.
Glad you're here. So we're going to do something we've never done before on this podcast. We're going to flip the podcast on its end. We're going to try something new. We generally close with rapid fire questions, but today, Maxim, you get to be the guinea pig to try our rapid fire questions first.
Sounds good to me. Being in startups, I feel like I've made a career of being a crash test dummy, so bring it on.
All right, fair enough. So one of the questions we always like to ask is there an open source tool that you use on a daily basis that you just couldn't live without, besides your own products?
Yeah, I don't know if it truly technically counts as an open source tool in the sense of the tech, but in the audience for sure, I'm a big fan of the work being done in Orbit. Certainly use them quite regularly to just get a better understanding of what's going on. And of course, complementary to that, big fan of what you guys are doing at Scarf as well, yielding like all these kind of hidden opportunities.
Well, we love that. We do. So if you want to talk more about Scarf at any time, feel free to just jump in. But as we continue with our rapid fire questions, you are based in Los Angeles, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Favorite restaurant in all of LA?
Oh, I discovered a new one recently called Mother Wolf, which is unbelievable Italian food. Highly recommend. Get your reservation early.
Okay. And if you're traveling, is Italian food your go-to? Like, do you seek out those restaurants, or is there some other type of cuisine that you are a big fan of?
You know, I'm a big fan. I've been lucky enough to travel a lot in my career, and I always enjoy figuring out like what's the kind of local specialty and finding a great version of that. So I was recently in New Orleans for the Apache Con there, and I found this amazing like spicy crawfish pie that was so good. Right, never gonna find that anywhere else. So that's usually how I like to flow with it.
Yeah, I think, when you go to certain places, there's just certain cuisine you have to try no matter what, right?
Exactly.
Like we were just in Brussels the other week, and, Avi, you were like, I need to find some good Belgium food.
The mussels and fries were incredible in Belgium. It was great. And FOSDEM was a great conference for that note. Maybe we can dig into that later.
Yeah. So, Maxim, probably the most important question we ever ask, in this rapid fire round is, when you go up on the stage, and I know you were at ApacheCon and you got to talk at ApacheCon before, when you walk up to the stage, what music would you ask them to play as your walk-up music to the stage?
It's a fun question. I was joking with a friend the other day about how I maybe have this like relentlessly positive and determined, outlook on life, and I always have James Brown playing in my head. So I think it would be a James Brown song. There's one in particular called "The Boss."
Yes,
which is an all-time classic.
Excellent pick.
I use that as a pump up for the toughest meetings, the biggest presentations. Hasn't failed me yet.
Oh, wow. So there we go. We got James Brown. We're going to put together a playlist from everybody who comes on and answers that question. It will be epic. We've got all kinds of eclectic music. Right, Avi?
No, we do indeed.
Yeah, I don't. Did we ever ask you, Avi, what your walk-up music would be? I don't know if we did on the show.
No, I don't think we ever did. I mean, we did. We at Scarf we did this like internal thing where we were talking about all of us talking about what our theme song would be. I don't know if we specifically did any kind of walk-up music though.
Are you going to pick one now? Share with the world?
Oh
gosh,
no. I'm not ready to answer these kinds of questions. Okay, I have to think about it.
Yeah. See, that's how the rapid fire goes. We don't know where it's going to go. But Maxim, while Avi's thinking, and maybe he'll come back to us in a second.
Yeah.
What's your first experience with open source? What was the first toe dipped into the open source space?
Yeah, I mean, I think like many, my real kind of first touch point with it was understanding what exactly it was and kind of having my mind blown, right? Like the three of us here definitely understand this wild reality that 90% of software has some substantial open source element to it. And I think once I learned that statistic, I started digging in, kind of looking to understand like what are the kind of hidden, the kind of hidden heroes that are driving all the things I use and I depend upon. that was my first kind of flashbulb moment. But I think my most kind of personal, like, oh my God, open source is awesome moment was, like many people my age, I grew up playing Microsoft's Age of Empires, like this great strategy game.
Yes.
And also, like many people, I ran away from using Microsoft products and found myself loving my MacBook Pro. And a couple of years back, I think it was actually during the pandemic, I found myself with more time like we all did. And I was like, man, I'd love to play Age of Empires again. Couldn't find it for MacBook, but found an open source alternative called Zero AD. And for me, you know, I had played with open source before that, but it was the most emotional and kind of fun moment of open source for me in playing this open source version, learning about the people building it and maintaining it, you know, donating to the project, and really seeing like this is something special. Like this is a group of people who are passionate about something, who want to make sure it exists, make sure it's accessible, keep evolving it. And I think for me that was intensely personal because it went beyond like tools, went beyond SaaS, went beyond infrastructure, and it touched upon something that I grew up with, that I had such a personal relationship with. And for me, it's experiences like that that are so exciting.
Okay. Oh, great.
That's a great answer.
You know, I mean, I do a lot of gaming myself. I've got a Steam Deck, which now Steam Deck is 100% Linux. So, you know, there you go. So now there's several games that will play on Linux, just an FYI. Always fun. But Maxim, continuing with the rapid fire, let's say we're going to a conference. We're at the next Apache Con. We're hanging out. We're going to go have a chat. What's your drink of choice?
Certainly depends on the time of day. You can always find me clutching an iced coffee in business hours. But if we're getting together in the evening, I'm a big fan of drinking like Frank Sinatra. So I love a martini, a bourbon, an old fashioned, or a Manhattan, depending on how formal or not the vibe is.
Fair enough. And what do you see as one of the common mistakes people make in the open source business space? Maybe you've talked to other founders, you know, other people in your role. Do you see like a common pattern of mistakes that people make?
I think one that I see the most often, at least from where I sit in the ecosystem, is really kind of two things. I think the first is proceeding with too many assumptions and not finding opportunities to ask questions. And that happens on all levels, right? People getting from something as micro as people getting into kind of arguments in, you know, threads because they've not DM'd each other to ask a question, all the way up to not talking with users and really kind of digging for the underlying why for certain behaviors or decisions. I think the other key thing is, and we see this all the time, and I'm mindful to do my best not to be one of these people, is people are, of course, realizing the business value of open source more than ever, right? We're seeing this kind of renewed excitement of, you know, oh, this thing can really do something. And it can do something to the balance sheet. It can do something to the growth. It can do something to the business itself. And the bad part of that, right? There's plenty of good, but the bad part, I think, is you get this kind of exploitative taker behavior. And I think you see this mistake all over the place where people are always taking and they're not being mindful of like that this is a relationship type thing, right? Where you have to be giving, you have to be bringing value, you have to find ways to bring something to the table, whether it's as simple as like positive energy and, you know, good ideas, or something as big as, you know, hosting events or contributing to a project. But I think those people who are not recognizing that balance, they inevitably end up failing or at least being someone that they maybe wouldn't want to be.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Should we? I think maybe perhaps we should move towards.